That small town factory seems to be worth more than we thought.
I thought it was plain, but maybe I made a mistake. If that's the case, maybe I should have taken a job at that factory. With family connections, promotion would be certain.
When I returned home from the funeral, I was shocked to hear my husband and son talking. I work at the small factory my father ran, but my husband and son, who work at a large trading company, always seem to look down on it. However, after seeing the large number of people who attended my father's funeral, their attitudes changed. I can't stand the thought of them taking a job at the factory we have worked so hard to protect just for fun. Moreover, it is a big mistake to be sure of your career because you're a relative. There are people who make their living at that company, and those who take pride in their work. I can't allow those people to be insulted because of me. With quiet determination, I packed my belongings. I will never come back to this house again. My name is Nancy Wilson. I was born and raised as the only daughter of a small-town factory owner. My husband's name is Robert Wilson. He was a salesman for a trading company, and we got married about 30 years ago, having a son named Mark. Mark, influenced by his father, grew up to be a sociable and cheerful child. Rather than just cheerful, he is more like flashy and showy. Before getting married, I found those traits of Robert fresh and attractive, but once married and seeing Mark grow up the same way, I feel like I'm the only one with a different sense and feel out of place. What's more concerning is Robert and Mark's sense of money. Both of them are big spenders, often straining our household finances. We've had numerous arguments over this, but we've never been able to see eye to eye, and here we are. However, I never expected that this dissatisfaction would turn into such a big deal. I have been working at the factory run by my father, Edward, since I was young. I've been there for so long that now I'm entrusted with the position of executive director. My father wants my son Mark to help with the factory management, but young and flashy Mark seems more interested in sales at the trading company than in our factory.
I like talking to people, and I think I'm suited for sales.
But I know that Mark, who said that to my father, secretly despises the factory, saying, "I hate the dull small-town factory." My father seemed to sense Mark's feelings, and after that, he stopped talking to Mark about the factory. It was hard to see my father looking so sad, but neither Robert nor Mark had any interest in factory management, and had always looked down on our small factory as a mere subcontractor. It doesn't feel good to have the factory that my father and I cherish so much looked down upon. But I had given up on trying to change Robert's flashy mindset, knowing we thought differently.
This time, I'm going on a tour with some friends. I'm thinking of taking Mark with me, so I'm going to buy a motorcycle.
What? But motorcycles are expensive, aren't they? Are you buying it?
Why don't you chip in half?
Since both of us work, we have an agreement to split living expenses, but we can spend our own earnings freely. That's so sudden. When I showed reluctance, Robert raised his eyebrows.
He's a salesman too, so networking is important. It's for Mark, so it's fine.
All right, but besides the motorcycle, why don't you sometimes take Mark to see his grandfather? His health hasn't been great lately, and he might need a short hospital stay. Seeing Mark might cheer him up. My father, despite running the company energetically, couldn't escape the effects of aging and had been going in and out of the hospital recently for short stays and tests. My mother passed away a few years ago, so I worry about my father living alone. But when I express my concerns, Robert gives a half-hearted response.
Oh, right. It's tough right now because I'm busy, but maybe sometime soon.
I'm talking about Mark. Lately, whenever I point out something to Robert, he quickly becomes irritable. This time was no different, and he immediately glared at me.
Stop nagging. We talk about work because we're both in sales. I need to pass on my know-how to him.
I have recently started to think that they both just want to have fun. Robert has always used work as an excuse to be away from home, leaving me to handle most of the childcare and housework alone. Mark, having grown up watching his father, often says outdated things like that's just how men are. I'm worried about whether Mark will ever be able to get married with this attitude.
Anyway, that's it. About the motorcycle, I'm counting on you.
Well, okay. Later, I found out that Mark had secretly visited my father.
Mark suddenly showed up at my house. I thought something was up, but he just asked for money. He said he wanted to buy a motorcycle helmet.
My father told me this in a casual conversation, and I was at my wit's end. I can't believe it. Robert told me to chip in for Mark's motorcycle.
Mark said he'd buy the helmet himself, but he's my adorable grandson, so I gave him the money.
Like many grandparents, my father is doting on his grandson. But as I see him become more self-indulgent with age, I'm beginning to reach my limit. I am fed up with my son's selfishness, even though he is my own child. The same goes for Robert, whom I married out of love. Robert never helped with housework or childcare, using his work as his excuse to have fun. Back then, my mother was still around, and my workplace was understanding, so I managed. But now, I feel my love for him fading.
Nancy, I'm sorry, but I have to be hospitalized again. Please take care of the company.
Okay, I will. Honestly, I have started thinking about our divorce. As for the factory, I can't rely on Mark, and he probably doesn't want to take over. It might be better to find someone, regardless of blood relation, to take over. I'll talk to my father after his hospitalization. I'm sure he'll agree. Since my father was hospitalized, my days have been busy with my work and caregiving. Work is manageable with the help of my colleagues. It's busy, but thinking about standing proud when my father returns keeps me going. The problem is caregiving. Robert and Mark still use work as their excuse and don't visit the hospital. Ever since I scolded Mark for asking my father for pocket money, he's been sulking. Robert supports Mark in this. It's heartbreaking that even though they are both adults, they only visit my father to ask for pocket money, and it makes me want to cry. Did I raise him the wrong way?
Nancy, you shouldn't say that. You've done your best. Don't worry too much.
My father, weakened both physically and emotionally by his hospitalization, comforted me. In moments like these, I deeply feel my father's greatness. I was very frustrated that Robert and Mark didn't respect my father.
I might not be able to leave the hospital this time.
Dad, don't say things like that. My voice was almost a scream. I had suspected it. And the company is running smoothly without my father. It's thanks to him that he had anticipated this situation and distributed the work accordingly.
Well, I'm old now. I've made preparations and I'm ready. I'm leaving the company to you. Even if I get discharged, I will retire.
Dad, I couldn't say anything more. My father had worked hard on the front lines for many years. And just as he had declared, he never left the hospital. My father passed away a month later. It was a peaceful end. I felt like I had lost my only ally in the world, and I clung to my father and cried for a while. But I couldn't just stand still. I had to do what needed to be done. Everyone at the company was willing to help. The problem was, unsurprisingly, Robert and Mark.
Edward passed away?
That's unfortunate.
Looking at their sad faces, I thought, they didn't even visit him. Swallowing my words, I proceeded with his funeral preparations.
Why do we need such a large hall? A private family funeral should be enough.
Yeah, let's just say our goodbyes among ourselves.
People from the company and our business partners are coming. We can't do that. You always say that networking is important for work. When I showed them the plan I discussed with the hall manager, Robert and Mark were displeased. It was laughable for people who didn't visit him to suggest a private funeral. They probably just didn't want to spend the money. Even though it wasn't their money, it was really frustrating.
He's just the president of a small town factory. There's no way that many people will come.
Yeah, it's a shabby factory. Why are you showing off like this?
What did you say? When I raised my eyebrows, Mark realized his mistake and awkwardly looked away. I knew they looked down on the factory, but this was the first time they had explicitly called it shabby. They grew up and thrived on the money from that shabby factory, even getting pocket money at 25 years old. How did they end up like this?
Anyway, I oppose it. We don't need such a large-scale funeral.
What do you know? You don't know anything about the company.
I'm a salesman at a major company. I've attended more events like this than you. I know better.
Robert didn't say it as clearly as Mark, but it was obvious he also looked down on the factory. His face turned red as he glared at me irritably.
Even if there's not enough money, I won't contribute a cent. It's your fault for being so showy.
I was dumbfounded by his words, considering how many times he had asked me for money for things like motorcycles and golf, claiming they were necessary for work. How many times had he asked me to support his career? The money I had gradually given each time has now amounted to a significant sum. It's enough to cover the scale of the funeral he's now opposing. Don't worry, the company will handle the funeral, and if there's any shortfall, I'll cover it myself.
Do whatever you want.
You always tell me not to waste money, but now you're spending it on this.
Mark also seemed upset that I was going to pay for it. Does he think his parents' money is his own? Your grandfather was the president. This is not a waste.
Mark, there's no point in arguing. Let's go.
I'm the one who feels it's pointless to argue. Robert and Mark glared at me with disdain before leaving. They were probably off to have fun somewhere, claiming it was for work. They said they would attend the funeral, so I had no choice but to ignore everything else. Once they stopped interfering with the funeral arrangements, everything proceeded smoothly. Things were a bit awkward at home, but I was too busy to worry about it. I did the minimum housework, but my time was fully occupied with preparing for the funeral and work. On the day of the funeral, Robert and Mark's eyes widened when they saw the attendees.
So many people showed up.
There are politicians and even celebrities here.
Isn't that David, the president of Dad's company?
The hall I had prepared was filled with people. It was unexpected for Robert and Mark, who had belittled the small factory. Robert spotted David, the president of his company, and hurried to greet him.
Hi, David. Thank you for attending. I'm Robert from the sales department.
What? Oh, I see. My condolences. I'm saddened by the loss of such a remarkable man.
You're too kind.
As Robert finished speaking, David ended the conversation and walked toward me. Robert watched in surprise as David walked away.
You must be having a tough time with your father's passing. Will you be taking over the factory?
I can't say for sure until I see my father's will, but that's my intention.
I see. You should be fine. We'll support you. Edward was a great help to us.
Robert and Mark couldn't understand why David, the president of a large trading company, was speaking to me as an equal. However, the moment I mentioned my father's will, their expressions changed. With a sense of unease, I shared memories of my father with the people who attended the funeral. The funeral was over, and I was busy with the cleanup. Mark and Robert eagerly left first, without even pretending to help. Considering that from the start, I was the only family member involved in the preparations, it was natural, but there was a strange sense of weariness. There's still plenty to do, so please continue helping from tomorrow.
Sure, Nancy.
Nancy, please rest early today as well.
I thanked the employees who had helped and left the funeral hall. Cleanup finished earlier than planned, and as I headed home today, I thought I'd take it easy for the first time in a while. "Hi, I'm home." I called out, but there was no reply. I wondered if they were still upset about the funeral, but the voices coming from the living room sounded strangely off. I wondered what was happening and decided to listen in. Mark and Robert were having an excited conversation.
That small town factory seems to be worth more than we thought.
I thought it was plain, but maybe I made a mistake. If that's the case, maybe I should have taken a job at that factory. With family connections, promotion would be certain.
As their words became clearer, I couldn't close my open mouth. They were playing around by getting employed at the factory and the company we've been desperately protecting. Moreover, it is a big mistake to be sure of your career because you're a relative.
Yeah, exactly. It's because we're family that a woman like Mom became the executive director. The employees would definitely prefer a man as the president, wouldn't they?
Their words belittled both me and the company, making my body tremble with anger.
Women taking maternity and childcare leave and still getting promoted must be nice. Men work themselves to the bone without those breaks and still can't get ahead.
Maternity and childcare leave are nothing like the breaks they imagine. It's like doing another job while away from the company. I realized how badly I had failed in raising Mark. I never thought he would grow up to be so narrow-minded and outdated. Moreover, he looks down on his own mother and even mocks me.
Well, it's not too late. You could say you're helping Mom and switch jobs. It'll all be yours eventually anyway.
Mark turned out this way largely because of Robert's influence. He never helped with childcare or housework, but was always eager to spend money on expensive hobbies for Mark. This hasn't changed since Mark was a child.
That's true. Next president does have a nice ring to it. I'll talk to Mom.
Their comfortable lives were built on my sacrifices. It was the moment I clearly realized something I'd been avoiding thinking about. If things continued like this, they would keep trampling on me. Moreover, Robert and Mark were about to trample on the factory and company that my parents, the employees, and I had worked so hard to protect. Many people make a living working there, and many find fulfillment in their jobs. I couldn't let my mistake harm the employees. Quietly making up my mind, I walked past the living room where the two men were chatting and laughing. Since there were plans to stay overnight while preparing for the funeral, my belongings were already somewhat packed. Maybe it was because I secretly wanted the divorce with Robert. I didn't need to pack anything further. I could leave immediately. 3 seconds later, I walked out of the house. Neither Robert nor Mark noticed. Without looking back, I got into my car. It was convenient, so I decided to return to my father's house where he had lived alone. It's too full of memories to sell, and it has plenty of space. Though it feels too big for one person, my father was a well-known figure in the town, and many people didn't want the house to be sold. I had already prepared to live there since I often stayed over when my father's health was poor. I sent the divorce papers to our old house. The day after I left, I received an overwhelming number of calls from Robert. "Hello.
Nancy, where are you right now?
The sudden loud noise on the phone made me frown. Where? At my parents' house. Haven't the divorce papers arrived yet?
Divorce papers. What are you talking about? I haven't heard anything.
Robert was clearly flustered. He must be worried about losing his source of money. I sighed deeply. Our different senses of money have become too hard to ignore lately. Now that Mark is grown, it's fine, right? You two enjoy yourselves.
What? Are you kidding me? No, let's talk this through. I'll change whatever I need to.
For once, he wasn't yelling angrily. Seeing me as a source of money, he tried to flatter me with a forced, gentle voice. Mark was the same way.
Mom, it's too much to leave suddenly. Please come back. We're family, right? Let's talk.
Mark, you're already 25. You should be able to manage without me. It's time to stand on your own.
Standing on my own and you leaving are two different things. It's lonely to break up the family, regardless of independence.
He was unusually meek, unlike his usual arrogant self. They always left everything at home to me while they played around. On top of that, they looked down on my job and me, acting as if they were superior. Now, suddenly, they were talking about loneliness, family, and wanting to talk things out. Thinking they were eyeing my father's company behind their pleas made me sick. However, I was living at my parents' house. They know the address of my parents' house, so if I push them away here, they will just show up at the house anyway. After thinking it over, I decided to talk to them. All right, but keep in mind that I want to divorce you.
Oh, okay. Let's just talk first.
Robert and Mark underestimated me. They were salesmen, confident in their persuasion skills, and thought they could easily talk me out of it in person. They can think that way for now. I am completely fed up with them. To completely sever ties with the two of them, I began preparing for the discussion. The meeting took place 3 days later. It was rare for Robert and Mark, who usually claim to be busy with work and quickly leave the house, to immediately agree to a discussion. I had hoped for about a week to prepare, but they wouldn't allow it. They were likely planning to gang up on me and talk me out of it. They probably thought that if they gave me a week, I'd talk to others and gain some advice. In fact, that was my plan. But if I couldn't prepare alone, I'd find another way. In reality, I had already been preparing since I mentioned wanting a divorce. It was just a matter of speeding up the plan, which posed no problem for me. I brought a lawyer with me.
Nice to meet you. I look forward to working with you today.
This lawyer had helped us a lot with the company. He's the most well-known lawyer in the area and is also very strong in divorce cases. Robert and Mark seemed intimidated at the mention of a lawyer.
Wait, hold on. Isn't this a bit too aggressive, bringing a lawyer to a family discussion?
His strained laugh was pitiful. His voice was shaking, clearly more flustered than he appeared. I told you, I want to divorce you. If you aren't willing to agree, this is quite normal.
Mom, do you really want to cut ties with us that badly?
Mark looked at me with a sad expression. Before, this might have swayed me, but after hearing their conversation in the living room, I found that I felt no love for either Robert or Mark. That's right. I obviously want to sever ties with someone who thinks they can get promoted just because they're family in the company that my parents, the employees, and I have worked so hard to protect.
What?
Mark turned bright red and fell silent. He never imagined I had overheard that conversation. How naive, even though I left that day. They had no suspicion at all.
Why would you?
Oh, you didn't even notice I had come back. You were so engrossed in your conversation. That was the final straw. I don't want either of you to have anything to do with that company. Robert seemed to want to say something, but couldn't find the words. At that moment, the lawyer handed Robert some documents.
Since the beginning of your marriage, you have been asking Nancy for money, claiming it was for work. Nancy has meticulously documented the amounts, purposes, and dates of these transactions. We would like you to repay this total amount. If you agree, there will be no alimony claims.
What? Money.
Robert snatched the documents and stared at them in disbelief. The amount was almost the same as what he had grudgingly agreed to spend on the funeral.
But this. Yes. What about the money for Mark? Isn't that child support?
I was disgusted by his pathetic excuses. They were truly greedy people. The money given to Mark after he became an adult and started working isn't child support. But the money you claimed was for him has been excluded from this total. And this is the remaining amount. Robert's face turned pale as he glared at the documents. He looked like he couldn't believe it. Apparently, he had no idea how much money he had actually spent. You've always wanted to buy expensive shoes, suits, and watches, claiming it was for sales. Every time you asked me to help and said it was for work, I always said I was just lending you the money.
But we're married, so helping each other is.
I don't remember you ever helping me. Robert never helped with housework or raising Mark. Unfortunately, there are no witnesses, so alimony would be difficult to claim. I didn't want to deal with a prolonged court battle with him, so I gave up on alimony. Even this demand for repayment felt like a nuisance. Although the lawyer assured me he would collect the money, I didn't care about it as long as I could protect the company my father left behind. Robert fell silent, and I watched him quietly. In the silence, Mark spoke up.
If you really want a divorce, discuss it with Dad. But I'm your son, right? My ambitions for promotion and job change were just a phase. I'll change my attitude and work hard, so please forgive me.
His words were proof that he hadn't changed his mindset, but did Mark realize that? Apparently, Robert was shocked when his son betrayed him.
Mark, are you going to abandon me?
With this debt, no wonder Mom is fed up. I'm her son. Even if she wants to cut ties, she can't.
It seemed he was now considering the inheritance and decided to flatter me, abandoning his father. Like his father, he was utterly shallow. I was the one who primarily raised him, so how did he turn out like this? Where did I go wrong in raising him? Lately, these thoughts consumed me whenever I looked at him. That's true. The bond between parent and child can't be severed. Robert slumped, and Mark smiled. Robert looked like he was about to grab Mark, who was smiling. They used to be a close father and son, but money has made them like this. Selfish people are frightening. But Mark, I don't want someone who wants to be president or get promoted for such silly reasons to be involved in my father's company.
What?
Mark's face froze. At that moment, the doorbell rang. Robert frowned suspiciously.
Who could it be at a time like this?
It's a guest I invited.
What?
Robert and Mark visibly tensed up. Too much trouble to explain. I quietly stood up and invited the guest in. David, thank you for coming.
When Nancy asks, I can't say no.
David?
The visitor was David, the president of the trading company where Robert worked. He had been an acquaintance of my father's for a long time and a business partner of the factory. Although Robert only learned about it at the funeral, we had known each other for quite a while. Like the lawyer, he was more of my father's acquaintance than mine.
I heard that my employee has been causing trouble. I apologize.
No, since he is my husband, David, you don't need to worry about it. I should apologize for troubling you instead.
It's all right. Edward helped us a lot, and I hope to continue a long relationship with your company.
David smiled kindly and looked at Robert. Facing his employer, Robert straightened up, sweating profusely.
You're Robert, right? It would be a problem for someone as clueless as you to get involved with that company. I'm sorry, but could you give it up?
What? The small town factory.
Seeing Robert's surprise, David sighed deeply and shook his head. Robert, unable to assert himself in front of his boss, seemed confused about the situation.
It was fortunate for us that Edward separated his private life from work. Although, because of that, Nancy ended up marrying someone like you. It's fortunate for us that we couldn't stop the deal because of your ignorance and disrespect.
What do you mean?
Oh, and you must be Mark. You work in the sales department at Brown Trading, right? Your president wants to have a word with you. Here, the call is connected, so go ahead and talk.
Really? Oh, okay.
Just having David there changed the atmosphere of the room dramatically. With a kindly grandfatherly smile, David handed his phone to Mark. Mark's company is also a business partner of ours.
I think Mark's boss will tell him the same thing. Robert, you need to divorce Nancy.
But this is a family matter.
But you're interested in that company, right? So it's a no-go. Even if you weren't interested, it still wouldn't work. Neither you nor Mark are suited for management.
When a current president says it, it carries more weight. Robert was at a loss for words, desperately searching for a rebuttal.
You don't even know how many patents that company holds, do you? Nancy is already managing the patents. Even one of those patents is an American treasure. It's extremely valuable. I can't allow someone who would be dazzled by such value to stay near Nancy.
The talk of patents was news to Robert, who stood there, mouth agape and paralyzed. Ignoring Robert's bewilderment, David continued in a relaxed tone.
Do you understand? Mishandling just one patent could harm not just our company and Nancy's company, but America as well. I can't let someone who doesn't understand that be involved with that company.
Mark was likely hearing the same from his own boss. Seeing Robert still trying to argue, David delivered his final blow.
If you don't want to end up on the streets, stop being greedy.
It was a clear warning that further involvement would lead to their downfall. David was in a position to make that happen. The thought of the people who attended my father's funeral must have crossed their minds. If other company presidents, lawyers, politicians, and famous people shared David's views, Robert and Mark would be blown away like paper in a storm.
I understand.
Imagining his own downfall, Robert looked down and spoke weakly. Mark, having heard something similar from his own boss, also promised to no longer involve himself with me. After that, I successfully divorced and got Robert to repay the money he owed me. Robert and Mark were demoted and forced to relocate due to the recent trouble. Robert was transferred to the south, while Mark was sent far north. Moreover, they were given dead-end positions with significantly lower salaries and no prospects for promotion.
It's too risky to let them run loose. We plan to keep them employed here. Mark's boss has the same plan.
Despite the underlying fear I felt from David's words, I was grateful for his help and decided to accept it. I intend to repay this favor by supporting the company my father left behind. Freed from Robert and Mark, I dedicated myself to work and now lead a fulfilling life every day. This company was left to me by my parents. Some even call it an American treasure. The small town factory that Robert and Mark mocked is my life's work and one of the small businesses that support America from behind the scenes. Even a single patent is considered an American treasure. With David's words in mind, I continue to work hard today.